I'm laughing at myself because I've said the word super so many times and my brain is getting confused. Hey, editing Marissa checking in here. I was kind of all over the place in the intro for this video, so this is my makeshift intro. Hi friends, welcome to episode 3 of So You Want to Move to Australia in 2025. I'm going to be breaking down a to-do list, if you will, of things to do when you arrive in Australia to set yourself up for success in the job hunt. There are 5 things we're going over today, and of course they're listed in the chapters of this video for your reference below. I also wasn't satisfied with the outro either, so I'll see you in a bit. The first thing you'll want to sort out is your phone when you arrive in Australia. So just think about your day-to-day and how much you rely on your phone. At least I know I do. And you'll definitely want to have access to phone data as quick as you can. There are phone kiosks in the major airports that you can get this sorted with if you'd like to take that route. I think the most important thing is to figure out what kind of phone and SIM card that you have. Some of the newer models of phones only run on eSIMs versus some of the older model phones. Like I have an iPhone 13. My phone does have a physical SIM card. So definitely first step is to find out what kind of SIM card you'll need, and then you can kind of go from there. I would recommend a pay-as-you-go plan. That way you're not locked into any sort of contract or anything like that. And if you'd like to look into the providers, Optus, Telstra, and Vodafone are probably the most popular choices here. And they all have similar plans. When I first arrived to Australia, I was on Optus, and then I moved to a region of Australia where Optus didn't have coverage, and I had to switch to Telstra. And I've had very similar experience with both carriers. Nothing really to complain about either way, and the prices are about the same as well. All right, now that we have our phone sorted, let's go over the things that we need to set up for ourselves before finding a job. The first is your tax file number, or TFN for short. And think about this as kind of like your social security number in the US. You will need an address in Australia to apply for the TFN. And you can easily apply online. It doesn't take very long at all. I will go ahead and leave the link to apply for a TFN in the description below. Within about 2 weeks, you'll receive a letter with your TFN. So definitely keep that in a safe place. Take a picture of it, whatever you need to do to keep that safe, because you will need to provide that to your employer once you do get a job. And you can start working without a TFN. However, you will be paying more in taxes until you provide your employer with that TFN. And since it's so simple to do, you might as well just do it right away. That way you don't have to worry about it. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is we are going to open an Australian bank account. There are several major banks here in Australia, and all of them are good options. There is Commonwealth Bank, there's ANZ Bank, there is Westpac Bank as well. I definitely think the easiest way to open a bank account is to walk into any branch of any of these banks and talk to somebody who can help you open the account that's right for you and how long you plan to stay in Australia for. Once you have your bank account open, you can then transfer money from your US bank account into your Australian bank account. And there are several ways to go about doing that. You can do that directly through either your bank at home or your bank here in Australia, but typically the fees are a little bit higher when you do a direct wire transfer. I personally use a money transfer service called Wise, and I find that the exchange rate is really good, and the fee to transfer a large chunk of money from one bank account to another is much lower than doing it directly through your bank. And I have never had any issues with Wise, so I would highly recommend that. There are a lot of YouTube videos out there explaining how Wise works, and even Wise's app and website are pretty straightforward. So I would definitely recommend looking into Wise or something similar to transfer your money from your US bank account into your Australian bank account. Obviously, the amount of money that you're going to transfer over varies from person to person. And I'm not a financial expert at all, but I will say, in my experience, it is pretty difficult operating in two different currencies. And while you're in Australia, you're going to be making Australian dollars. So it does make the most sense to primarily operate out of your Australian bank account. But I'm not a financial expert. I'm not here to give you financial advice. I'm just here to give you the tips that have worked for me personally. And if you have any questions, obviously feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'll try my best to answer them with my limited financial capabilities. Okay, we have our phone number, we have our TFN, we have our bank account. We do need to open one more account, and that is an Australian retirement account. So the retirement funds in Australia are called superannuation funds, also known as super funds. And yes, work and holiday visa holders are eligible for Australian retirement funds. The Australian government actually requires employers to give employees retirement money on top of their paycheck. That's right, on top. At the time of filming this, which is in February of 2025, the minimum that employers are required to pay their employees for their super is 11.5% of their paycheck. Now, this is a totally foreign concept to us US citizens because our government doesn't require employers to give us any sort of retirement money at all. And we actually take out money out of our own paychecks to pay into our retirement fund. So this is a huge pro of working in Australia for Americans. Yes, we will get taxed when we eventually apply to have it paid out to us, but it's free money to begin with. So I see it as a massive win. So you can set up your own super fund, or when you do get a job, your employer should give you information on how to set up a super fund through them. But I recommend opening your own super fund because you'll likely have more than one job while you're in Australia on a work and holiday visa, and it's just easier for you to give your employer your super fund information so that they can pay into that. That way, all of your super funds are in one account and you don't have to worry about having multiple accounts to deal with later on. I'm laughing at myself because I've said the word super so many times and my brain is getting confused. So for my super fund, I signed up for that through a company called Future Super. And that's where all of my super funds have been going from both of my jobs that I've had in Australia so far. I found it super easy to set up. It's super straightforward. You can just go online on their website and enter all of your information, and then you're good to go. Okay, I wanted to wrap up this video by touching on a few tips to find accommodation while you are in Australia. And I know that we have already set up our accommodation for the first couple of weeks while we're in Australia, which is gonna be super helpful for your TFN specifically because you will need an address to receive that letter. But I wanna talk about more of like the longer term stay when you find a place that you really like and you want to settle there and try to find a job there. I think the two most popular ways that backpackers and work and holiday makers find accommodation is through Facebook or flatmates.com. So with Facebook groups, there are real estate groups that you can join, there are sublet groups that you can join, and all of these groups are pretty active in terms of people posting rooms that they have for rent. I will say that Facebook is pretty competitive and you will have to have your notifications on at all times when you are looking for a place because things fill up so quickly. What I've had the most success with and where I found all of my accommodation thus far in Australia is through flatmates.com. So flatmates.com works two ways. And the first way is you can search for accommodation, filter through by your budget, by what you're looking for, where you're looking for, etc. And then you can kind of scroll through the search results and contact the property owners via message on Flatmates. The second way that Flatmates works is you can actually create a profile with all of your details. So you can write a bio about yourself, you can list your budget, you can list your move-in date and what kind of neighborhoods that you're looking for. And then people who have rooms for rent can actually reach out to you. And I have had success with this. 2 of my 3 apartments I have found this way, where they have reached out to me first and it ended up working out great. So these are probably the more popular routes of finding more longer term accommodation. And I'm saying longer term in quotes just because realistically in the backpacker world, we're only looking for accommodation for a few months at a time. So that makes it really hard for us to commit to a lease somewhere, and also get approved for a lease, especially if we don't have rental history in Australia yet. So these are the 2 most common ways that people like us on work and holiday visas find success in finding a little bit longer term accommodation. I do know people who live out of hostels as well for an extended period of time, so that's definitely an option. And there are work opportunities out there that will provide you with accommodation as part of your work agreement, or sometimes it's at a discounted rate or something like that. But I was also lucky enough to find a job that provided accommodation at one point. So those opportunities definitely exist as well. Hey, I'm back. I wanted to just wrap up this video by saying I know that this is a lot of information to take in, but I definitely think that you can get the first 4 out of 5 things we talked about today done in the first week that you arrive in Australia. As for the accommodation, I wanted to include that in this video as well, because next video I do want to dive more into the work part of your work and holiday visa. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments as always, and I will see you in the next episode. Remember, I'm here for you, I'm rooting for you, and I cannot wait to see you thriving in Australia. See you in the next one. Bye!